On today's podcast, we have Mayor Lauren McLean of Boise, our fearless leader. She is in her second term as the mayor of Boise and is doing a phenomenal job. She is the first woman elected to the position of mayor in the city's 150-year history. She served on the city council for 10 years prior to that and was the president of the city council, has really served since the moment she arrived in Boise, and a lot of credit for how and why we're growing the way we are in a smart, responsible way is because of her. I'm very honored to have her on today, and I think you'll really enjoy this conversation with our Boise Mayor McLean. Mayor, welcome. Thank you so much for making the time to come up.
Oh, thanks for
today.
having me, Tommy. It's great to be here.
We really appreciate you. And when we rebooted the podcast, we thought, well, we need you here soon. So thank you for making time and appreciate your service. How have you been?
I've been good. Yeah, it's been since the election, a little quieter. Have some evenings at home. I get to make dinner with my husband. It's been really nice.
I was thinking like those, having done it once, and again, never again for me, but it is a grind on your family and your whole everything, those elections. And they're every 4 years for you. So
Yep.
Second term, first re-elect you went through. Is everyone kind of recovering and looking forward?
Yes, well, I would say we recovered quickly. But yeah, my family was super involved. My kids are away at college and working, but Scott was really engaged. But you kind of forget because I got into a cadence of, just wasn't home every evening.
Yeah.
I was at City Hall and doing city business during the day and campaigning at night. So it wasn't until after that I realized, like, oh my goodness, I have all this time now. It's just been really nice to have a winter with Scott.
That's actually a great segue into my first question I wanted to talk about, because when I would see you during the process leading up to the election, the part you love the most is door knocking.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, every time I saw you, I'm like, hey, how are you doing? You're like, I just got through knocking 50 doors last night. But I think it gets back to since I've known you, and it's been a long time, tell us a little bit about the why, because you have always had this internal desire to serve people. And it's really amazing, and it's so authentic and genuine. I think people see that in you, but where does that come from? Were you built with that, or?
Oh, thanks, Tommy. That's a little overwhelming to hear and a little intimidating. My why. I'd say this is that I feel so lucky, and it's March, so actually it's fun to tell this story. I've probably told you this story before, but my husband and I met in high school, went to different colleges, got married the summer after I graduated, and he's had another year of finished school. And then in March of 1998, we got a call and we came to visit Boise, and it was such a surprise, and it really changed our life. We decided to move here, and we were here 3 months later, and we had other plans, and I just always felt so grateful that we found this place, and that always felt like this place wrapped her arms around us, and we got to build this great life here with really strong community and connection, and so I've just, since the day I got here, I wanted to be involved in my neighborhood, my block, my neighborhood, my city, my state, because I just feel so blessed to call this place home.
And you did it quickly too. I mean, like you said, it was like kind of immediately you raised your family.
Mm-hmm.
You had your
Yeah.
kids here, raised your family, and they became part of the community. But you served on the parks board, right?
Yeah, as a kid, now when I think about it, I'm like, oh my goodness, my kids are the same age or older than I was when I had kids, and started doing things. But yeah, I cut my teeth in. First, that summer that I moved here, I showed up to volunteer on some campaigns, and because I had some time, I wanted to do something. I was at Boise State as a grad student, and so with that came the opportunity to travel the state and work in all different counties from a political perspective. But I led the first effort as the campaign manager to create a levy to set aside open space in the foothills. And in that 4 months of 2001, so we've been here for a little bit, I saw the impact that, it was 500 volunteers, but like people that didn't really know what we were doing but cared, could have in coming together, organizing for something we cared deeply about, and then, really creating lasting impact and shaping the city that we called home. And so it was through that work really that I started getting involved in the city. I'd never thought about city stuff before. Served on the Parks Board, Kids in Tow often, and then various different commissions before the council. And now
For
this role.
city council, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And talk a little bit about, so city council, 8 years,
Yep,
so 2011 to 2019, and president of the council for the last few years.
yep.
And that's when I first started to get to know you
Right.
a little bit. And that to me, like for a developer, and we interact with counties and cities all the time, is you want people that are deeply concerned about people and the place we live, and that can critically think, because we don't always agree on what's best for everything. But I always appreciated 100% of the time. And you had some great council people.
We really
during that.
did.
You really did.
Yeah,
Because it was always thoughtful feedback, and that's all you want. You want the goalpost to be kind of there, so you know what the rules are, and then you want really thoughtful feedback. And it was always great. So when you ran for mayor, it's been great. 1 term, and then now just went through a reelect. One of the next questions, that first term was tough. I mean, I think no one signs up for those COVID decisions like
Right.
immediately. Some of the social justice stuff that immediately happened after. You got to be breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief that this term is starting less, with less distraction from just kind of city business. But, Boise's the capital city. It's growing tremendously. There's
Yeah.
pressures on everything. And tell me a little bit about lessons learned during that first 4 years that are going to help you now going forward.
Sure. It is interesting because it's like these March things 4 years ago, we were all starting to hear about pandemic
Yeah.
and seeing what was happening in other places. And I was just getting to know the team of people that are career public servants, trying to hire a team myself. And then we found ourselves, as you do unexpectedly in these positions, having to make decisions that we never would have expected having to make. I learned a ton from that. Like I learned, and I'd say that I'll carry that with me forever, is I never knew I'd know so much about science. My dad's a scientist, and I was never interested, right? So now I am very interested in and read a lot about pandemics. But it's, I learned that you make the decision at the moment you have to, the best decision you can with the information you have,
Yeah.
and you pay attention to data. And so that is something that I learned through doing in terms of my comfort now. And you got to make decisions at times, and sometimes you're the only one making them, but the buck stops with you. For me, in the first term, I would say always, but what guided us and me in those decisions was putting people first. So setting the rules that we were going to center the decisions and the tough calls we had to make on protecting people. And I would say that through like making real on that commitment, learned how through doing to keep that in the forefront of my mind when we're making any decisions about our city as we grow. And I hear a lot.
Probably came pretty natural for you. Because just of
Well, I would
who
say it
you
was
are,
like, yes,
you're
it
so,
was value set. This is the lens we're going to use.
that's kind of what the foundation's built on for you though, right?
Yeah.
Is I'm here to serve people and I care about them deeply and I want to do what's best to protect them and protect my community. And anyway,
Yeah.
it
So
was,
I'd say that's really was a takeaway, how to make that real rather than just thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
And for the next 4 years, I'm actually really excited to have the foundation that I now have from the last 4 years, to have had thousands of conversations with voters at the doors in the course of the campaign and in our listening sessions and all the things that I do as mayor, and to know that Boiseans are both nervous about the future and really excited about the opportunities that we have. And so I'm excited to get to continue working on housing and, beating the odds on homelessness and good jobs and climate action, really preparing our city for our kids in there so that they have the opportunities that we've been blessed to have.
that's awesome. I want to ask you, remind me to come back to kind of how do we keep Boise, Boise? I hear that a lot,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about that. But I know for me, my growth and things I've learned, and now I'm getting older, so I think you get more reflective, right? And it's the harder things, maybe a challenge that I had that I would maybe not a mistake, but something I would have done differently. And I don't need you to get any specifics, but I assume taking that role as mayor, you're the CEO of the city, the state's capital
Yeah.
city. You have all these people answering to you. how did you learn through some of that and some of the struggles or maybe some of the challenges that you're like, oh, I learned a lot through that experience? Because I do think a lot of times we look back and everyone makes things look easy, but it's hard sometimes. And how do you approach and conquer adversity that comes your way?
Yeah, so and that's a lot of questions in one, Tommy.
Sorry.
The first off, if you're not learning, like, then you're not really living. So I would say that even without recognizing it, in all the decisions we make and all the things that we do, the next decisions we make, the things we do are shaped by what we've done before. And so I really do feel as though when I think back on the last 4 years and even beyond that, the time that I've been involved with this city that I love, there are times I think, oh, now I would have done something differently. But in the moment, you got to
Yeah.
trust yourself in the moment with the information that you've got, and then learn from the impact and the experience going through it. And so coming in these next 4 years, I've learned so much, right? I learned in the first campaign, I learned in the last 4 years as mayor, learned in this last campaign. And I'm still learning, right? As we try to shape
Yeah.
strong teams, take care of the city that we're charged to take care of, and both think about needs of the moment and needs of the long term. It all is shaped by all the work that we've
I love
done.
that. And sometimes you gotta have a little grace too for like just yourself, because you're right. It's lonely at the top sometimes. You make a good decision, the best decision you can make, and then it's like, okay. And then only you can look back afterwards and say, wow, that was hard. What did I learn? And I love that. That's great. You build on it, right? So
Yeah.
for people
It's
listening,
really iterative.
it is. It's a great process. Let's go back to Boise. So one of the questions I will never forget, like when I transitioned from medicine to being a developer, I had some very trusted friends that like, why on earth would you do that? You're going from the most trusted, respected profession. This was pre-COVID though. Pre-COVID, back when people believed you when you're a doctor, to being a developer, a total scumbag that basically just comes in and does all this stuff and makes our traffic worse. So I get asked a lot because we're doing a lot. How do we keep Idaho, Idaho? How do we keep the Treasure Valley, Treasure Valley? People are moving here. Let's stop everything. How do you answer the question of how to keep Boise, Boise?
Yeah, it's something that I hear a lot too, and I'd say that our city, our region, but I'll talk about it from a city perspective, has always experienced this from the time the people arrived here and decided they were going to make a city, recognizing that there were people here before them, and we've grown, we've like exponentially, and then things calm down a bit, and then we have these big spurts again, and things calm down a bit. And in every one of those periods, when you look back, you've heard the same things like, new people are coming, the city's changing, it'll never be what we've loved about it. But through it all, it always is. And for me, I really believe it's because as long as we can create and protect the connections that we have to the place that we call home, but most importantly, the people that live amongst us and with us, then that essence of our city, of our region will be kept whole, even as the face of it changes and the build of it changes. But I also will say in Boise, I often talk about how like our city's growing. And as we grow up, like we also have to grow up and we want to grow closer so we can keep those vibrant and close connections between people within neighborhoods to the places that they love, because that reminds us of who we are. And it'll again, 10 years from now, we'll all be fighting again, wanting to protect whatever, right now we don't want to see. And so it really is, it's a process that our community has always gone through. And I think we always end up through it stronger than we were before.
So, listen, I have appreciated your leadership on many, many levels. I think politically, like if you just said I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, but like
I had somebody, we'll talk soon about the police chief, but I had a search firm tell me the other day that by everything they read, they thought I was a Republican. I said, hey, will you get online and talk about that a little bit, please?
I would tell you, when you were running again, people would say, who are you supporting for mayor? And I'd say, Mayor McLean, 100%. And they'd like, why? And I said, because she is the best business-friendly mayor that the zoning rewrite. So here you are, 1965 was the last time that thing had been
1965,
messed
yeah.
with. And you were able to thoughtfully, and I think it was mischaracterized too, over a number of years, get all the public input from everybody on what to do, and then you had this really thoughtful process that ended in a new zoning code for business, for infill development, for doing things kind of growing smartly, like everything you would read in a book of how to develop a city. It is probably the most capitalistic, like, because people, it's funny for me to listen to people from conservative people that come here from somewhere else. I'm not going to pick on California. They'll come from wherever. They get here and say, stop it. Put regulations up, no more. Well, that just drives the cost up.
It does.
What we need is options. And I look at that zoning rewrite. It gives more options for housing, more options for infill development, and using this land that we have, that we're all guests here, right? There were people here before us in this beautiful city along this Oregon Trail and the mountains and the Snake River and everything we have. We're all guests here. And we got to figure out how to do it right. But that code rewrite, I appreciate it. I think the families of Idaho, if they realize what it will do over the next few decades, it was just a great thing. So that's one. And then two, I got to hit on this because I hear a lot about homelessness and we don't want to become Portland. And we're going to become Portland. And I say, for heaven's sakes, have you seen what Mayor McLean is leading so that we don't become Portland? I think your proactive actions on homelessness, I just wish people knew more about that. I've been involved in one effort, but it's this idea that we're not going to become Portland by being proactive. So I do want to get in a little bit to that.
Sure.
And those
Yeah.
two things I think are huge. I want you to comment on them because I think they affect business, they affect families, they affect jobs, and they've been wonderful.
Well, I appreciate it. And I'll touch on the zoning code rewrite first. I mean, that was a whole team of people that made that possible. And we had a citizens committee that, by design, I wanted folks from all walks of life and different opinions so that they would, even on the committee, have debates about what made sense, what didn't for Boise. We took it, as you said, to so much community feedback over the course of 4 years. And I'm really proud of what we got out of it. And it's a market-based approach, but I like to say we set the map for the market to respond, because we need homes for all people,
Yeah.
all walks of life. Our kids need a place to stay. Their kids will. People today need places they can afford. And if we don't have more homes, we're not going to be able to have homes at the price points that Boiseans need. But I heard a lot on the doors about it, frustration, fear that what might happen next door to them was not something that they wanted. And I often talked about it, especially because we decided to put the density along, future transit corridors,
Yeah.
the busiest streets, how instead of, like, as our valley does grow, we have so many folks that are driving through our neighborhoods in Boise to get to work. We'd want them to live with us.
Yeah.
So that our neighbors are driving through Boise, so that our neighbors can walk to get on the bus to get to a job. We make more space for more people. And, I often think about it in terms of my own block, because somebody said to me the other day, this is going to really destroy the city that I love, because, we've got great neighborhoods like the North End, and this zoning code is just going to ruin it. I said, in 1965, the North End was possible. But it hasn't been possible since then, because you couldn't have a neighborhood coffee shop a couple blocks from your house. You couldn't have a mix of housing types. And on my block, I have, right next door to me, a house that, rents a couple rooms. On the other side of me, 4 cottages that are little bitty cottages. They're condominiumized, so homes of all sizes. On the other side of that, it's like a $2 million fancy house. Across from them, a 6-plex. Then 2 small single-family homes. One has an accessory dwelling unit they rent, a triplex across from me, and another single-family home, all on a block with 14 kids of all income levels that are out on the sidewalks and getting to know each other and playing. And we have that connection. And this is what the zoning code rewrite makes possible, is neighborhoods for all people of all walks of life.
It's more options for more people.
Yeah.
And we need it all.
And we need them.
We need it. We need it. But it's so counter to regulation that is pushed down to, like, this is exactly what we want to see here and here and here and here. And if you look at what the cities have done, that it's a disaster, and that's regulation.
And everybody is figuring that out around the country.
Yeah.
The country, like the Republican legislature in Montana, signed by the Republican governor, passed pretty much a zoning code rewrite to ensure that, communities could and developers could come in and build the housing that communities need so that their rural communities, urban communities have housing they can afford. And that's what we're doing, and we did in Boise, and now we're implementing it. And then on the homelessness piece, look, nobody, and I totally understand that people are worried about becoming a Portland or a Seattle. Like that last thing any of us that call Boise home, that love Boise, want to see happen. So what we have to do is learn from what has happened in other places, and we got to be proactive. And a big piece of that goes back to the zoning code rewrite. It's housing, housing, housing is how you prevent homelessness in the long
It's
run.
the book we've all read.
Yes.
Housing, homelessness is a housing problem.
Yeah. So housing is key, but so are really important and strong partnerships between philanthropists and hospitals and developers and government in meeting the needs of folks that are experiencing homelessness, helping them exit it, providing them the services that they need to stay successfully housed so that they can, seek opportunity with a stable foundation of a home. And that's what we focused on at the city of Boise, even before me, is in ensuring that we've got homes for people.
The leadership has been tremendous, and I love getting into discussions with people about it, because I think the second you start describing the effort that's going on, they're like, oh, I didn't know that, and oh, I didn't know that. So the one I wanted to kind of hit on, it was funny because I knew you were coming on today, and this morning there's a newsletter that came out this morning. So I was lucky enough with Caleb Roop and Andrea Roop to do the Our Path Home, the campaign to end family
Yeah,
homelessness.
thank you for sharing that.
It was awesome. And I did all night shifts in the downtown ER for a long time. So I think one of the hard things for most people is there are lots of different kinds of homelessness. And I think cities that have attacked the problem, they've had to look at the different services that are available, whether that be, substance abuse or mental illness, and there's lots of work to be done. But this specific initiative that was started by the city was to just try to end family homelessness. And when you dig into those numbers, they're kind of staggering, and most of it was women with children, domestic violence, but not all. And it was people that were right on that edge. And we found through your research that it costs a whole lot less to keep someone housed,
Yeah.
an order of magnitude of 10, than to have them become homeless and then rehouse them. So it's been a great effort. Can you pull that up, Matthew? So I did want to kind of hit this with you because I'm pretty proud of what happened.
Good.
It was awesome.
You should be.
So, I think we had, if you scroll up a little bit, there were three major goals of it. Of our campaign outcomes, a little bit farther, Matthew. Goal number 1.
But I'm not going to let you off the hook for that goal number 2. You got to keep at that one.
I know. So goal number 1, reduce the number of families on the Our Path Home waiting list. And if I have these numbers right, we've been able to prevent 749 evictions and rehouse 403 families.
And there's always more work to do. But the committee and the organizations that made up this campaign have so much to be proud of.
It's amazing. And when I see those numbers, one of the things for me personally is because I did night shifts, there is a place on a medical chart, and we used to use paper when I'm old. And at the very end of the chart, at the end of it, it's a formal thing. You would say discharge to. Discharge to, and then you would write where that person's going. So it was either discharge to the hospital, admitted, discharge to the police to go to jail, or the place that most people go is home.
Yeah.
And I will never forget, like hundreds of times over my career, because I saw so many people at nights, that you would get at the end of the night with a mom and 2 kids or a small family, and your discharge at the end of the night was discharge home, knowing full well there was no home.
There wasn't a home. Yeah.
And it was a car, or it was, I don't know where. And so many times you would give these resources. You'd say, hey, here's some social workers you can call tomorrow morning. But man, it would sending those little kids out, oftentimes at 2 or 3 in the morning, and just thinking, oh, I hope they're okay. So I'm really proud of what we did to try to prevent some of those evictions and keep people in. Again, it's cost effective. Again, from kind of the dollars and cents side of it, investment into something that prevents something bigger, right, for taxpayer dollars. The next goal was, this is a big one. This is what you're talking about.
Yes, because I love this one.
So add 300 homes into a pool that's available for these families. So every night, the numbers are we have roughly 300 families that are homeless. That number's gone down a little bit. But having a pool in the developer apartment pool to put those people, and I think we're at 50. We're still going. We're still
We're
trying to
50, and when I don't think that counts the homes that'll be available at Franklin and Orchard.
agree.
Where
And
the
when's that coming
developer
online?
dedicated 10% of those, so I
Yeah.
think that's 17 to 20 homes perhaps. I keep saying soon. They ran into like so many developments, some issues.
Yeah.
They're almost there. I think it'll be this spring that they open.
I love that. Last goal was to raise 8.5 million to Scale Solutions, and we were able to raise
Yeah.
$11,773,000. What I want to highlight on this, as an ER guy, like you think in triage, right? Like it's like, okay, if you come in for a chin laceration and I can fix you really quickly, I want to try to triage you to a place where I can fix you quickly instead of putting you in with someone that's a major trauma or a chest pain. And one of the things that I think this did is it created a new triage system with some of those dollars so that we're more effectively triaging people to the resources they need. So anyway, very proud of that, but it was led by you. I don't get a chance to thank you in the city. I mean, we live in such a great place. And so I think, gosh, no one tells you thanks enough.
Oh, well, I feel like it's really the committee and the organizations
know.
that we thank, because this is an effort that was made possible by so many people that were deeply, deeply committed to it. And it inspired me to encourage our council to invest as well. But it was your leadership, the Roops, others on that committee that made it possible.
It was just fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can we hit a couple things that bother me?
Sure. Okay.
I think
Guess it depends.
I think we got a lot of knuckleheads still out there, right? And sometimes they're loud and we shouldn't pay attention to them. But Matthew, pull up. Like I saw this the other day. So this was a post someone put. These are related to the Freedom Foundation.
Oh, wow.
For those that are not watching,
You'd be much better off from a mental health perspective, Tommy, if you just shut this down.
I know.
I haven't been on Twitter in a while. I'm seeing this, and I'm glad I haven't been.
I know, but it drives me crazy. So there's people that actually haven't been here that long that are trashing Micron.
Yeah.
So here you have an Idaho-based company,
In Idaho.
born,
and bred.
raised,
Yeah.
international company that's provided jobs for thousands of families for years, income, and they come in from out of state and make these really horrible claims about Micron, and they're just horrible people, and tell them to get out, this boycott Micron thing. I do want to talk a little bit about Micron because I think for me, in fact, I wasn't going to say the story, but I had we grew up, my family, we stayed for 25 years right on the corner of Chinden and Eagle, and our church.
Oh, wow. Like right by HP.
Yeah, and our church boundary kind of was there, and there was a family that we kind of took under our wing and helped for a long time that were in an apartment that needed some help one time. And I happened to be there helping them when their son was born. And then over the years, we just kind of stayed in touch with them to help them. Mm-hmm. And I watched their children grow, 2 kids, and then I was actually there when their parents were visiting and passed away in Boise, and I got to help them with a funeral.
Oh, wow.
And then, they get bigger and kind of move away. But 2 weeks ago, I got an email from this kid, and he said, "Hey, I haven't talked to you for years. Can I go to lunch with you?" And it was the little boy that I'm like, absolutely. So I was able to go to lunch with him this week. But why I'm telling you the story is, he sat with tears in his eyes, and I said, how's everyone doing? And he said, awesome. So his father had been at Micron that whole time.
Oh, wow.
And started at
So early days.
entry-level position and has worked himself up, and now they own a house. And he went into their life they had built, and I watched how hard they worked to do that. Mm-hmm. But it was Micron as their employer providing that job, providing those benefits. And to me, as I sat there listening to him, I thought, one, good for you. I mean, this is a story of hard-working people that really figured out how to navigate life and
Yeah.
create a life for themselves and their family. And then secondly, thank heavens for Microns, the companies of the world that invest here, that provide jobs for people. And anyway, it's just in contrast to some of this other garbage. So let's talk about Micron and their investment, because
Yeah.
it wasn't always a given that they would stay here.
No.
In fact, you talked to them. It was close, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
2 or 3 or 4 finalists, and we were one of them, but you had a big role in that. So did Governor Little. Talk about that significance of that.
Yeah, first a couple things. I mean, Micron is a homegrown company, and we should be really proud of that. I mean, it is the company that leads the world in memory manufacturing, and it started right here in Boise, Idaho, with a whole bunch of Idaho people, right? I mean, it's super cool. And when Scott and I moved here in the late 90s, they were, at that point it was 8 to 10,000 folks worked at Micron. And these are jobs of all wages, right? The folks that are building and maintaining the clean room, the computer science folks that are dreaming up what's next, people in the fab that are making it happen. And then that company, like many others, shifted their manufacturing overseas. Yet now here we are, and because of national security interests, as well as the need to have homegrown, good manufacturing, family wage jobs, there's legislation in this country that's getting them to come back here. And so, this was an incredible opportunity to be part of the chasing of the company to make sure that this global company that was born and bred in Boise picked Boise for new investment.
Ironically, stayed home.
Right, stayed home. But in these times, you can't just rely on that, right? So I've said to many people, and we should recognize that it was not ever a given, because I want us to understand that we did this once. We can do it again with all the suppliers that have to come, right? It wasn't because they were from here. They were intentional in their decision to pick Boise because of Brad's leadership, because of the shared values that the company has with our city, because of really the ingenuity and scrappiness of all of us that work to keep them here. And by keeping them here, I say that because if they hadn't decided to invest here with their research and development teams for the future, with the fab that'll try out the new technology, and when it's perfected, they'll ship it to Syracuse for mass manufacturing, but it's going to be designed here. If they hadn't decided to do that, probably 10, 15 years from now, they'd be gone. And so we were at a fork in the road. And if we want to think about, regardless of these folks on Twitter, if we want to be real about having a thriving state with opportunities for our kids to come back to, opportunity for folks of all walks of life, right? I've spent hours and hours in training centers for the trades because they're training up to build fabs at scale. CWI is going to offer our kids certificates for these jobs that'll be great. Students at Boise State don't have to go somewhere else for their jobs when they graduate with material sciences and computer sciences. They can work here in leading edge, cutting edge memory manufacturing. And we need that if we want to keep Boise the Boise that it is, the state that it is. You got to have modern day opportunities. I mean, you can go this way of these folks and just put our heads in the sand, and make room for the retirees, and then lose our kids who have to go somewhere else. Or we can be real about how important it is to invest today and plan for the future, and the work to get Micron here, the partnership we will have with them that we have today and will have into the future, is an important part of being a vibrant city and state in the long run.
That was perfect. Amen. I think you hit it all. And I think if most Idahoans that genuinely, it's nothing without facade of everything else they want to say or do, you want your family to be able to grow and experience the Idaho you grew. And so when people say, how do we keep Idaho, Idaho, it's by everything you just said.
You got to have jobs for all people. Then you get a chance to disappear into the mountains and play, and you come back to your job for all people in a community where people know your name and you feel safe and welcome.
Yeah, perfect. It's amazing. I do want to talk a little bit, play on that a little bit. So Garrett Lofto, who's awesome.
Yeah.
Garrett's amazing. He's just amazing. I really, really enjoy him. So he's the CEO of Simplot right now, for those listening. He came to me a while ago and said, hey, let's do something for to help with transportation. So we started a little group of business leaders to say, how do we help? And we didn't really know what that meant. We just thought, hey, with all of the pressures on the valley and with transportation being so important, what are the things that we could be helpful on? And so we put this group of CEOs together. We've been meeting now for about a year and a half. You have been very helpful with Bree. She's
Yeah.
fantastic. And then Elaine, your
Yes.
longtime colleague. Listen,
Elaine Clegg,
Elaine Clegg.
new CEO of Valley Regional Transit.
I will never
living the dream.
Listen, she called me and she's like, "Hey, can I go to breakfast with you?" And I said, "Sure." And I sit down with her. And she's like, I think I'm ready to really go make an impact. And I said, "Elaine, good hell." I think she was 70, close to it at the time.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I said, if 24 years on the council and all this stuff she's done is not an impact, she's like, "No, I really want to make an impact." So I'm thinking about making this transition to be the CEO to take over for Kelly at VRT. So VRT is Valley Regional Transit. So that is an incredible opportunity because I think she's just a tremendous leader, and I've watched what she's done in a short time. Anyway, we have this group of CEOs, we call it, right now we call it Idaho 2040, which is how can we help this thing going on? And I think we've kind of honed in on 3 efforts. One is at some point there needs to be some sort of a bypass. I know there's a lot of opinions on that, but right now, Neil Nilsson, who's on our committee with ESI, is actually buying buses so that he can bus people back and forth to Micron. I mean, that's where we are. And so somehow we got to get the east-west thing. And then the second thing is public transportation. Very few people know that we're the only state, like we're it. It was us in Kentucky for a long time, but we're the only state in the country that doesn't have any state funding
Right.
for public transportation. And then you have VRT, which is our transit authority, which encompasses Ada and Canyon County. And they do a great job, but they don't have a budget that's not,
Right, because there's no funding.
there's no funding.
Yeah.
So pretty much what they do every year annually is come with hat in hand to all the jurisdictions and say, hey, will you kind of match what you did last year? That's not an effective way to kind of handle something as serious and as important as public transportation. So we're trying to help with that. And then lastly, rail. I mean, at some point, you're going to have some rail figured out, which is super expensive. There's heavy rail, there's light rail. Anyway, I think we've done some really good homework.
I think if we looked at the numbers, we say it's super expensive, but building brand new highways
Oh,
is
yeah.
super expensive. So it's all expensive. And
Yeah.
so we really ought to be you got to look at it all. And
gotta
I
look
think
at
in
all.
the long run, you would find that rail and the usage is less expensive. In the same way we did the study to see if you keep people housed, everybody saves money.
Amen.
You get rail done, you're going to save a lot of money.
So one of our early meetings we did is we had ITD come and talk to us about what their plan is. And I think they've got a very good plan that probably gets us another 10 years. And that's along I-84. There's room for one more lane. And that's it. That's it. There's no more right of way. So it's going to happen, and hopefully we can be helpful. But what are your thoughts on some of the constraints infrastructure-wise? We've talked a little bit about transportation, about having affordable homes, good infill kind of development. But what else worries you as far as kind of where we're headed? Because I think we're going to see ongoing explosive growth here. We're not going to stop people from coming here.
We will see. I mean, our region will continue to grow. And so we've got to get real at the leadership level, both in the region as well as the state, about investments
Yeah.
today to prepare for the growth that we've already experienced and what's coming. You add an extra lane to that freeway, it's not going to make lives better for
No.
everybody that's having to drive it, right? But we work together to get as many people as possible that are willing and able to get off the road into a bus or into a train car. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
And now is the time to really get serious about that work and do what we can to expand the bus service as fast as we can. And then, of course, to look at regional rail. There have been a couple of things that we've worked on, because as you said, it's the cities really that are being asked to fund this. So with property tax, general fund dollars, we're investing in transportation. And it's a chicken and egg thing, because if it doesn't come often enough, those that have the choice to get in a car aren't going to get on the bus because it doesn't come often enough.
Yeah.
If you don't have funding, you can't make it come often enough. So it's really trying to be smart about how you build it out. And Elaine has been so good at that. And starting in June, while she's looking at budget cuts, she's actually been able, with her team, to devise a system that expands the number of people that are within a quarter-mile walk of a bus, and it expands the number of businesses that'll have bus access. So she did a great job. But we need more of that, and I appreciate the businesses that have come together working on 2040, because the state needs to invest. States, as they said, they got one lane on Highway 84. That's really expensive.
Yeah.
The investments and the impact they could have by helping, like every other state in this country does, invest in different transportation choices as we grow is really what you need to see. Look at Salt Lake, what Salt Lake did at early 2000.
Yeah, and there are a lot of, so back about
still going.
8 or 10 years ago, I went down there with a group 2 different times, and we went and interviewed their transportation authority. We interviewed a lot of legislators. We've interviewed the chamber, and kind of to understand, how did you accomplish this? And I think there's a lot to learn from them. There's one misconception that it was all paid for by the Olympics. That's not true. It's actually 100% false. They figured out a way to fund it, and they're reaping the rewards of that now, because they have a very robust, I mean, you go down there now, and just in the time, I brought this up in our last 2040 meeting, just in the last 20 years, there's 2 brand new highways. There's the Bangor Highway that went in, and now there's their Mountain View Highway that went in. And they've got rail, and they've got, front runner, and they've got light rail. They've got it all. And they'll tell you they're not perfect either.
Right. There's always more to be done.
But I'll tell you, their ridership numbers are really impressive.
And that was a great partnership of investment. State,
Yep.
the city, the county, the business community. Everybody said, this is in our best interests to invest in new ways of moving people. And they got it done.
Period. Well, again, thank you for your help. We this is going good, but I'm keeping you here too long. You got a city to run.
I do.
So
I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I know I got something soon.
So tell me what's next.
What's next? Oh my goodness. We have a lot of stuff going on. You will see more. Like I've said to my team, and I've said to the community, that these next 4 years are implementation years. You take away COVID, you take away all the different things that we experienced as a region and nation in the last 4 years, and we did great work. And now we can really supercharge that work. So you're going to see more on housing. You're going to see more solutions, and ask for partnership and shared investment to prevent homelessness and to stay ahead and beat the odds as we have. Really excited about the continued work to grow jobs here. Micron's the start. There's so much more to come. And all of that work, is being done by a great team at the City of Boise, but in partnership with the business community, with philanthropists, and most importantly with our residents, who are constantly saying, like, let's do more, let's lead, we got this, and doing it the Boise way.
Well, we live in an amazing place. There's nowhere like it in the world.
No, there isn't.
There's nothing.
No.
I mean, this place is magical, and it's built on our heritage of I love this place, and it's nice to have a leader that gets it, that loves people, that loves Idaho, that wants to keep, what we have, but make it so that it grows in a smart way. And we just really appreciate your leadership and all you do, and thank you for making the time for us.
Well, thanks, Tommy. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Thank you.